Jenny Millers was 29 years old, a waitress at Rosie's Diner, a little place squeezed between a hardware store and a laundromat in rural Kansas. Life for her was predictable, almost painfully so. She woke before dawn every morning, walked 3 blocks to the diner, tied her faded blue apron around her waist, and greeted the same regulars with the same smile. It was a smile that never revealed the loneliness tucked beneath it. Jenny lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment above the town's pharmacy. Family photographs in yellowed frames lined the small shelf by her bed, ghosts of a family that no longer existed. Her father had passed when she was 15, her mother just 2 years later. The aunt who had raised her afterward had moved to Arizona for her arthritis, leaving Jenny with little more than sporadic phone calls around the holidays. So Jenny learned to endure. Her life was one of quiet repetition, the kind that left no room for surprises. Until one chilly Tuesday morning in early October. That was the first time she noticed the boy. He couldn't have been older than 10. He was small for his age, thin, with careful eyes that seemed to watch everything without ever giving away what he was thinking. He sat in the farthest booth from the door, a backpack that looked too large for him propped against the seat, and a book open in front of him. That first day, he ordered nothing but a glass of water. Jenny brought it over with a smile, slipping him a paper straw. He gave the smallest nod, almost imperceptible, as if gratitude itself might expose him. The next day was the same. Then the third, the fourth. By the second week, Jenny realized he had a routine. Every morning, precisely at 7:15, the boy arrived and sat in the same booth. He read quietly while sipping his water, stealing quick glances at the steaming plates of pancakes, eggs, and bacon that other customers ordered. At exactly 7:55, he closed his book, thanked Jenny in the same soft voice, and left, always having eaten nothing. On the 15th morning, Jenny carried a plate of pancakes to his booth. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said lightly, as though she'd made a mistake. "The kitchen made an extra. I'll just leave it here instead of throwing it away." The boy froze. His eyes flickered with suspicion and hunger, 2 instincts fighting inside him. "It's okay," Jenny reassured quickly. "Better to eat it than waste it, right?" She placed the plate down and walked away before he could protest. From behind the counter, she watched him. Slowly, he picked up the fork. Minutes later, the plate was empty. When Jenny returned, he whispered a barely audible, "Thank you." From then on, it became their quiet ritual. Each morning, she brought an extra plate to his booth. Sometimes pancakes, sometimes scrambled eggs, sometimes oatmeal with brown sugar when the mornings grew colder. He never asked for anything, never spoke beyond a soft thank you. But he ate every bite as though the food might vanish if he didn't finish quickly enough. It didn't take long for others to notice. "Who's that kid you keep feeding?" Harold, a retired postal worker and one of the diner's oldest regulars, asked one morning. Jenny hesitated. "I don't know, but he's hungry." In the kitchen, Kathy, who'd worked the grill for nearly 2 decades, cornered Jenny. "You're feeding a stray," she warned, not unkindly, but with the weariness of someone who'd seen good intentions sour. Handouts make them disappear sooner or later. Jenny only shrugged. "It's fine. I used to be that hungry, too." It was the most personal thing she'd admitted to anyone at Rosie's in years. The boy never offered his name, and Jenny never asked. The way he carried himself, slipping quietly in and out, always watching the door and the window, made her certain questions would only drive him away. So instead, she made sure his glass stayed full, the food warm, and the booth his safe space. Little by little, the boy changed. His shoulders didn't hunch so tightly. His eyes, once fixed firmly on the table, began to meet Jenny's. First for half a second, then a full second. To Jenny, that fleeting eye contact meant more than words ever could. By the 6th week, whispers began to spread among the regulars. Charity worker on company time, one businessman scoffed. "Kids these days just want handouts," another muttered. Jenny ignored them. She had learned long ago that defending kindness only hardened those who wanted to sneer at it. But when Mark, the manager, called her into his cramped back office, she braced for the worst. "I've been watching you with that kid," he said, his sweaty brow furrowed. "You can't give away free food. It's bad for business." Jenny twisted her apron in her hands. I'll cover the cost myself. Just one meal a day. I can manage. Mark blinked. From your tips? Those barely cover your rent. It's my choice. Something in her tone gave him pause. After a long sigh, he relented. Fine, but if it affects your work, or if that kid causes trouble, it stops immediately. Jenny agreed, relief softening her posture. Each morning after that, she quietly set aside part of her tips, money she could have used for a new coat or the dentist, and paid for the boys' breakfast. Then, one bitter Thursday in November, the boy didn't come. Jenny found herself glancing at the door every few minutes, unease growing. She made his plate anyway, placing it at the booth. By closing time, the untouched pancakes felt like an accusation. She wrapped them up and carried them home. The next morning, nothing. The next week, still nothing. See, Kathy said gently after 10 days. They never stick around. Free ride in, so do they? Jenny's chest ached with emptiness she couldn't explain. She hadn't known his name, hadn't known his story, yet his absence felt like a light snuffed out. Then came the photos. One morning she noticed a stranger snapping pictures of the empty booth where she still occasionally left food. The next day she found out why. A local Facebook group had posted the image with a sneering caption. Rosie's Diner, now serving imaginary charity cases. The comments cut sharper than she expected. Publicity stunt. Bet they just throw the food away. Feeding strays creates dependency. That waitress is being scammed. For the first time, Jenny questioned herself. Had she been foolish? Was she just projecting her own lonely childhood onto a stranger? That night, desperate for clarity, she pulled out the small wooden box that held her father's belongings. Inside lay his photograph in his medic's uniform, and the battered leather journal he'd carried overseas. She turned to the page she'd read countless times before. Shared a half ration with a local boy today. Johnson said I was crazy. Maybe, but the look in his eyes when he ate. Same as mine when Mom saved me the last piece of bread during hard times. No one grows poor by sharing half a loaf. But those who forget to share remain hungry their whole lives. Her father's words steadied her. She didn't need the boy's name to know he had been hungry, not just for food, but for dignity. By the 23rd day of his absence, Jenny had stopped expecting him. She still looked at the door at 7:15, but with resignation instead of hope. That morning, she placed another plate of pancakes at his booth out of habit, not belief. At 9:17 a.m., everything changed. For black SUVs with government plates rolled into the diner's parking lot, moving in synchronized precision. The hum of conversation died instantly. Customers froze mid-bite. Outside, pedestrians stopped to stare. Uniformed men stepped out, forming a semicircle around the entrance. From the lead SUV emerged a tall man in a decorated dress uniform, rows of medals glinting on his chest. His face was weathered, his bearing authoritative. The diner's bell chimed as he entered, flanked by two younger officers. "I'm looking for Jenny Millers," he said, his voice carrying across the stunned silence. Coffee pot in hand, Jenny stepped forward, her hands trembling. "I'm Jenny." The officer removed his cap. His stern expression softened. "My name is Colonel David Reeves, United States Army Special Forces Command. I'm here because of a promise made to one of my men." He pulled a crisp envelope from his breast pocket and held it out. "This is a letter from the commanding general, and a personal message from Adam's father." Jenny's heart skipped. "Adam? The boy you've been feeding these past months." Reeves explained gently. "Adam Thompson. His father was Master Sergeant James Thompson, one of the finest soldiers I've ever served with." Jenny's fingers tightened around the coffee pot. "Is Adam okay?" "He's safe," Reeves assured her. "He's with his grandparents now in Colorado. But for months, while his father was deployed, he came here before school." What Sergeant Thompson didn't know was that his wife left shortly after his deployment, abandoning Adam. He was too proud and too scared to tell anyone. He survived alone, stretching the small emergency fund his father left. Until you... A murmur of shock rippled through the diner. Jenny's knees wobbled as the truth sank in. "Sergeant Thompson fell in Afghanistan 2 months ago," Reeves said quietly. He unfolded the letter inside the envelope. In his last message, he wrote, "If I don't make it back, find the woman at the diner. The one Adam writes about. The one who fed him without asking. Questions. Tell her she didn't just feed a hungry child. She preserved the dignity of a soldier's son." Jenny's vision blurred with tears as she finally accepted the letter with shaking hands. Colonel Reeves straightened, snapped to attention, and saluted her. Behind him, every soldier in the diner, and outside by the SUVs, followed suit. On behalf of the United States Army Special Forces, Reeves said solemnly, "And on behalf of Adam, we thank you." The diner remained utterly silent as Colonel Reeves' salute hung in the air. Even those who had once mocked Jenny's quiet generosity sat frozen, their faces shifting from shock to shame. The weight of the moment pressed on everyone, but for Jenny, it was nearly overwhelming. Her entire body trembled. She had never thought of herself as someone remarkable. She was just a waitress in a small-town diner, doing what she believed anyone else would have done. And yet here stood soldiers, men who had stared down war and loss, saluting her for nothing more than offering pancakes, eggs, and a place of safety to a lonely child. Jenny whispered the only truth she could manage. "I didn't know. I just couldn't let him go hungry." The colonel gave a firm nod. "Sometimes that's enough, Miss Millers. Sometimes the smallest acts are the ones that matter most." With that, the soldiers lowered their hands. Customers rose quietly from their seats, many with tears brimming in their eyes. Even Mark, the manager who had once scolded her, stood stiffly at the counter, swallowing hard. From that day forward, Jenny's life was never quite the same. The story of the waitress who unknowingly cared for the son of a fallen soldier spread quickly. First, through the whispers of the diner's regulars. Then, through social media, newspapers, and beyond. The very Facebook group that had once mocked her became the place where Master Sergeant Thompson's letter was posted in full, gathering thousands of shares and words of support. Customers began requesting Jenny's section specifically. They left generous tips, often with notes scribbled on napkins or tucked beneath plates. "Thank you for reminding us what matters. My brother serves overseas. Your kindness gives me hope. Never stop being you." Mark, who had once resisted her acts of quiet defiance, surprised everyone when he hung an American flag over the booth Adam had always sat in. Beneath it, he placed a small bronze plaque that read, "Reserved for those who serve and the families who wait." The booth was never empty again. Sometimes it was occupied by veterans traveling through town. Sometimes by families struggling quietly but treated with respect and dignity by the diner staff. No one ever had to ask questions. The plaque spoke for itself. A week after Colonel Reeves' visit, a thick manila envelope arrived for Jenny. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter, written in careful, blocky handwriting that spoke of a child trying his hardest to be neat. "Dear Miss Jenny, I didn't know your name until that day the colonel came. But every morning for those months, you were the only person who made me feel like I wasn't invisible. Dad always said real heroes don't wear capes. They wear uniforms. But I think sometimes they wear aprons too. When Dad stopped writing, I thought the world had forgotten both of us. But you remembered me. Every day. Even when I couldn't explain why I was alone, you never made me feel ashamed. You just fed me. Grandma and Grandpa are nice. They're teaching me to fish, and Grandma bakes cookies. But sometimes I miss Dad. And sometimes I miss your pancakes too. Thank you for not asking questions when I couldn't answer them. You were my safe place when everything else felt scary. Your friend, Adam Thompson. P.S. I finished the book I was reading. It had a happy ending after all." Jenny pressed a letter to her chest, tears slipping down her cheeks. Later, she framed it and hung it quietly behind the counter. Not in a place for show, but where she could see it every day. When customers asked, she would only say softly, "Just a thank you note from a special customer." Word of Rosie's diner reached further than anyone imagined. Soldiers passing through Kansas made detours just to send Adam's booth. Many left behind small tokens, unit patches, challenge coins, embroidered insignias, symbols of gratitude that meant the world. In military culture, Jenny and Mark began pinning them to a bulletin board behind the counter. Within months, The board became a patchwork of colors, shapes, and mottos, a living collage of thanks from around the world. 3 months later, a school group came in for lunch. Jenny refilled water glasses when a little girl tugged at her sleeve. "My dad says you're a hero," the child said earnestly. "Do you feel like one?" Jenny knelt to meet the girl's eyes, smiling gently. "No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who knows what it feels like to be hungry." The girl tilted her head. "Not just for food, huh?" Her teacher, standing nearby, gave Jenny a knowing look. "She's right. Hunger comes in many forms." Jenny nodded slowly. The truth of it sank deeper than she'd expected. As spring turned to summer, Rosie's Diner hosted a fundraiser for military families. What began as a modest plan turned into a community-wide event. Locals donated, businesses pitched in, and veterans drove in from neighboring towns. The money raised was enough to create a small emergency fund for children of deployed parents, something that made Jenny's heart swell with quiet pride. Even Mark surprised her. He matched the donations from his own pocket, sheepishly admitting one evening, "Never understood why my father always fed the neighborhood kids, even when we barely had enough ourselves. Thought it was nonsense, but I think I get it now. Sometimes a meal is more than food." Almost a year to the day after Adam first stepped into the diner, Jenny arrived for her shift to find something resting on her order pad. It was a challenge coin, polished and heavy. On one side, the insignia of the United States Army Special Forces. On the other, custom-engraved words. "Semper Memor," always remembering. Jenny glanced around the empty diner, stepping outside to look up and down the quiet street. But there was no one. No SUVs, no uniforms. Just a flag above the diner's entrance, stirring gently in the morning breeze. She slipped the coin into her pocket, its weight grounding her with a sense of connection to something larger than herself. That evening, as she hung her apron at the end of her shift, she noticed Mark placing a new sign in the diner's front window. The lettering was simple, but powerful. "Whoever you are, whatever you can pay, no one leaves hungry." When he caught her watching, he shrugged awkwardly. Figured it was time. Jenny's throat tightened, but she only nodded. The message spoke louder than any speech could. That night, walking home beneath a Kansas sunset, Jenny thought about Adam, about a boy who had once sat in silence, eyes too old for his years, now living with grandparents who loved him. She thought about the letter he had sent, about her father's words in his journal, about the challenge coin heavy in her pocket. Kindness, she realized, rarely echoed back in obvious ways. Most of the time, it disappeared quietly into the world. But sometimes, just sometimes, it returned in ways you could never predict. Not everyone who helps needs recognition. Not everyone who saves a life wears a uniform. Sometimes it's just a woman in a faded blue apron, sliding a plate of pancakes toward a hungry child, whispering gently, "Same as always, honey. No charge." And on a quiet October morning, when black SUVs rolled up outside a diner in rural Kansas, the world finally saw what kindness without conditions could do.